My name is John, and I am a sinner. And now this is your chance to say, hi, John. We'll come back to that in a moment. You are one too, but that is or can be all right because in this fellowship, the fellowship of the withered hand, the worse your story, the warmer you're welcome. And in fact, the more important it is to realize that I live in a condition that desperately means I need help, and that's hard to name. We're walking together through the 12 steps, and the first step is the most important, and it's the hardest, especially, I think, for people who are not addicted. Uh, I had a friend who's been in AA for many, many decades, and he told me that when I began studying him years and years ago, before very long, I think you'll be jealous that you're not an alcoholic. And one of the reasons for that is that the gifts that come with the first step are so great. But alcoholics have an unfair advantage of it. Step one is admitted that we were powerless over, this is the only time alcohol is used in the 12 steps. So now you have to supply whatever your deepest problems are. Admitted that we were powerless over our deepest problems and our lives have become unmanageable. And what I'm praying for you today, although this will sound odd, but for me also, is the gift for honest and humble despair. It's very striking if you ever go to an AA meeting when somebody says those words, my name's John and I'm an alcoholic, that's just a word, but there is a journey of unspeakable depth behind it and enormous pain and tremendous resistance and then just a flood of grace coming through to the other side to enable somebody to say those words. And part of what's hard is, for a variety of reasons, we live in a day when we don't have a word that captures that story or that weight for that sobriety, you might say, for people who are not addicts. And sinners in our day has gotten so misunderstood, so full of baggage, so lightened up that it just doesn't do it. So I want to talk about this for a bit. You may have noticed when you come to the Bible that there'll be stories of people who encounter God, and when they do, their experience is very much like somebody who is an addict, and they realize all of a sudden that they're an addict, for Bill W. or Dr. Bob or other folks in the program. So Isaiah in Isaiah chapter 6 comes in the presence of God. Woe is me, for I'm a man of unclean lips. Now think of all the words that come out of your mouth: self-promotion, deceit, ego, pride, flattery, intimidation. I am a man of unclean lips, and I dwell in the midst of a people of unclean lips. It infects every statement that we hear all the time. And I've seen the living God. Or Peter, when he's with Jesus in Luke, I think it's chapter 5, and he becomes aware in a moment of the staggering power, the nature of this man, Jesus. And his response is not, oh, I got to have some of that. His response is, get away from me, Lord, for I'm a sinful man. Or in Acts chapter 2, when Peter is talking on the day of Pentecost, and he tells the people about who Jesus is and what he offered, and then how they responded, what's been going on in their lives. And the text says, the people were cut to the heart and cried out, brothers, what must we do? Now, in just a few verses later, they had formed a fellowship with the program, Acts chapter 2, verse 42, and they devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching and to prayer, to the breaking of bread, and to fellowship. Day after day they met. So there's a fellowship and a program. That's what we're discovering together. However, Acts 2:42 would never have happened without Acts 2:37. That's step one. I was talking to Fred H., who is a person that has worked for a long time with the Hazelden Group, addiction, recovery, 12-step work. And he talks about AA 12 steps as a wisdom tradition. Our faith, my faith, the Christian faith, is a wisdom tradition. It seeks to address, like other religions, Judaism, Buddhism, Stoicism, ancient Greek philosophy, lots of different ways that people would try to address what's the right way to live? How can I seek to become a different person? And Fred made this really interesting observation. He said the problem with most wisdom traditions is they have a wimpy step one. They have a wimpy step one. So, gang, no wimpy step one. We have to do the hard work of connecting the dots and to say that experience that Isaiah had when he saw God and cried out, "Woe is me," or that Peter had, "Get away from me," or that people had when they were cut to the heart, or that Bill W. had when he hit bottom. They would use that language often. They hit bottom. Step one became indispensable. They said it was the only step that we could actually practice perfectly because that's what opens somebody up intensely to the presence of God and says, I will do absolute anything. You get a wimpy step one, see, and you're going to have a wimpy other 11 steps. It's when I come to see my great need for God authentically. Now, how do I do that? Well, you might start here. If you don't start anyplace else, start by asking, what are the struggles in your life that your partner, your spouse, best friend, person closest to you would say you need to work on? Now, that can be helpful because if I just ask you, what are your biggest problems, you might have to stop and think about it. But if I were to ask you, what's the person who knows you best think your biggest problems, like that person for me is named Nancy, and she could furnish a list upon request, a written list if you wanted, very readily. What are the relational defects? And I find for myself these days that more than ever before in my life, I'll go back and forth between just moments of despair. We're together over the holidays. Oh, I wanted to be this kind of dad and I wasn't. I wanted to be this kind of grandfather, but I wasn't. Of just despair. And then, well, of course, I will always do that. God, I'm going to need your help. I can't change that. I have this myth of what, but God, I need you, I need you, I need you, I need you. A statement that gets made all the time by folks who do the kind of stuff that I do for a living, pastors and people that write about faith and so is, how come the church can't be more like an AA meeting? Go to an AA meeting, just raw honesty, no pretense. People just dump it all out. The stories are unbelievable, deeply messed up. People have a sense of power that flows in those kind of meetings. Why can't church be more like an AA meeting? There's one whole book that's written that simply has that title. And the short answer is it can, if those of us who claim to be followers of Jesus will be more like alcoholics. And see, now part of our problem is often we're comfortable with talking about being a sinner in a pretty vague term, just kind of general confession. Or I used to have those problems way back there. But what makes a community, what makes a fellowship come alive, what begins to open me up to God is, no, God, I need you right now. I'm a train wreck right now. I'm on my knees before you right now. I admit my powerlessness over my biggest problems and that my life has become unmanageable without me. So here's what I want to do to just try to help make that a little bit more real for you. Take a few moments and think about some things that you are powerless over that are external to you, just to remind you that there is a God and he is not you. So traffic, weather. You may have noticed if you're watching these that I'm in a place of great beauty right now, and it is really, really good weather. And I have been doing some vacation stuff. I will be doing ministry stuff starting tomorrow just to make sure that you don't think poorly of me. I'm not in control of the weather. I can't control the process of aging. Most particularly, you can't control other people. And now you might think about some people in your life that you've been trying to control. What are your relational defects? Very often in relationships, there is a person who's project and a person who's the project manager. Often in couples, I won't mention which spouse tends to be which, but very often it comes out that way with parents and children. There's a book, hottest selling book around right now. It's called Let Them. I've not read the whole thing. I've read bits of it. And I think there's some good thoughts in that idea of honor other people's kingdoms if we do it right. Allow other people to make their choices. Don't constantly be grinding at them, trying to manipulate, control them, make them do exactly what I want to. So lots of wisdom there. However, the very first sentence of the book caught my eye, and I want to read it to you and then suggest something that I think cuts deeper. If you're struggling to change your life, achieve your goals, or feel happier, I want you to hear this. The problem isn't you. That's the first sentence of the book, Let Them. Now, in the Bible, the teaching is, in the 12 steps of the teaching is, the problem is you. The problem is me. And in particular, the problem is power. I do not have the power to become the person I want to become. And a little group of people discovered there is power available to us. Not that we can be godlike, not that we can have and use that power for whatever we want to do, but for a crisis like addiction, like alcoholism that I couldn't stop, I didn't have the power to, there can be the power to have freedom. So I want you to think now about what are you powerless over in your life that keeps messing up your relationship where you're saying, I'm not going to do that again. I'm not going to gossip again. I'm not going to yell at my kids again. I'm not going to blow up again. I'm not going to go to that website again. I'm not going to gamble again. Whatever it is, just think about it for a moment. And today, your job is to try to solve it. It's not, I'm going to work harder at being a better person. No. It's just, oh God, I can't. Here's the power of this program, of this community. Kent Dunnington has written this wonderful book, Addiction and Virtue. And he's been talking about this issue of why is there such spiritual power often in AA? How could there be for you and me as we're walking through this together? And here's what he says. What AA has recognized, what they have discovered is that the recognition and public confession of personal inadequacy is itself a spiritual achievement that needs to be ritualized and celebrated. The recognition and public confession of personal inadequacy is a spiritual achievement that needs to be ritualized. Hi, my name's John. I'm a sinner. So are you. And celebrated. Hi, John. The worse your story, the warmer you're welcome. This is from Ernest Kerr's book, Not God, on the History of AA, where he talks about the great problem that addicts face is the same as the great problem that non-addicts, if there is such a thing, face, which is denial. I'm not so bad. Now, of course, that's exactly what Jesus taught, just blindness. Our blindness to our sin, our blindness to our character defects, and the way that we trample relationships. Here's the sentence. The antidote for the deep symptom of denial was identification. I identify with other people who often struggle with powerlessness over their sin. Identification marked by open and undemanding narration, infused with profound honesty about personal weakness. Profound honesty about personal weakness. That is me. That is you. Now, hope is coming, but not yet, not too soon. It's living in the pain of step one. And step one is not just intellectual. It's not just an affirmation. It is a gift of God when I'm able to feel it. That's why very often when people are thrust into pain, when there's an open scandal or an open earthquake in somebody's life, it's actually the beginning of spiritual. We think the worst thing would be to have my horrible truths discovered and broken into. No. The worst thing is for them not to be. Step one, admit it. We were powerless over our greatest problem, and our lives have become unmanageable. Keep coming back. It works if you work it.
Hey, you just finished a video from our series, Steps, which is based on John's new book releasing February 4th by the same name, Steps. So if you're catching this video before February 4th, you might want to pre-order the book. You can do that at our website, becomenew.com/steps. And when you pre-order, it will unlock exclusive content from John just for you. While you're there, you can subscribe to Become New to make sure you don't miss any future episodes in this series or any other videos that we do. As a community, we believe in spiritual growth one day at a time, and a big part of that is prayer. There's a team of us that meets each weekday, Monday through Friday, to pray for viewers just like yourself. So if you have a specific prayer request, we would love to pray with you. You can text it to us to 855-888-0444 or email it to us at connect@becomenew.com. Thanks for joining us, and we'll catch you next time.